Well, thank you guys for coming here, wanting to ask some questions, learn some more, and maybe we can have some good conversation. We'll probably keep it short because we don't need to hold anybody up longer than necessary. But let's jump in. What stood out to anybody, or what questions did you have? What did you write down? If you want to do the QR code, you can. Hailee's looking at that right here. So we have a couple questions from there once the live questions dry out.
I don't know if I'm gonna phrase this well yet, but like, if we're thinking about our digital life when it comes to like schoolwork or like even like just computer kind of stuff, like how do we not let those necessary digital things like draw us in? Because I feel like with your phone, there's a lot that you can do, but like with other digital consumption.
Yeah, the language I use for that is the difference between utility and passivity.
Yeah.
So utility is like you have to, our digital world is awesome. It's like better than ever to get things done you need to get done. Like right before we walked to this table, I just told Preston, I just upgraded my computer and it is changing my life because I can get so much more done in a utility sense. Like, it's not that it sucks me into consuming more content, it lets me accomplish more of the things that like people are counting on me to do. Yeah. So I think that's probably a difference when it comes to like what you study and if you have a goal in your life you're working towards and the digital world allows you to get there, then it's awesome. When it comes to like passivity or vulnerability is the word that I use, like you clicked on something and you're like 30 minutes later like, oh my gosh, what am I looking at? That's where it's like it gets into shaping and forming maybe things that you didn't intend to do, where utility is typically intentional.
Okay.
Yeah.
I try to use some practical things like the do not disturb button on my computer, or mute notifications, or use a Pomodoro app. I don't know if you've heard of that. Just like setting time blocks where I'm going to work really hard for 40 minutes, then I'll spend 10 minutes checking my notifications and things like that. So that's some of the stuff I do on my computer to try to keep from getting sucked in, but I do all the time.
Yeah, would you say like when you're doing schoolwork you often get distracted? Or
yeah, or
is
I think like it's like my school email, I get like stuck on like checking it a lot because I don't want to like miss something, or like obsessively checking like my like Canvas, which is like the grade shell. I don't know, I feel like that gets unhealthy, or just like 5 hours staring at my computer working on an essay or like reading things, like help managing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I have some of the same things with my email for sure, and like what Preston's saying, I think if you were to set specific places or times during your day to look at your email, sometimes that helps, and honestly sometimes it's only lasted so long for you where I'm like looking at it on my phone in between the times that I had set to do administrative things on my computer. So yeah, that's definitely an ongoing battle, but the good thing is a lot of those things you're doing aren't warping type activities, like they're not destroying you, but they can be consuming in a different way.
It's almost helpful to differentiate between things that destroy you and things that just distract you.
Yeah, just a little bit distracted. Yeah.
Neither of them are good, but one's a lot worse than the other to get sucked into.
Kind of along the same lines, in being a campus minister, I spend so much time responding to texts and texting people to schedule things. Do you have any advice for setting boundaries during the day for like when to send and respond to text? Because I feel like all the time throughout the day I'm trying to respond to things to keep up, but it's constantly pulling my attention from what I'm doing.
Do you feel like those things get you into other places on your phone that you didn't intend to be? Or is it just so like you spend a lot of time texting?
The latter. I don't have any social media.
Honestly, so far you guys are doing a great job. You're texting people for your job and you're doing your schoolwork. I'll just say that, like that, the two things you guys mentioned are probably like, if there is a mile of things that you can get sucked into and it can mess you up, like you guys are winning right now. You're doing really great. I do think that knowing yourself is really important when it comes to tech use. Like, you know your own vulnerability too. Like, are you texting people back and are you there? Are you checking your email because you want it to fill something inside of you, because that would also be forming something in you that you don't want to happen. Like, if you want to be, if you want to just be highly, I don't know, motivated to accomplish things or want to get fulfilled from accomplishing things, then you could be like, hey, I actually need to like step back and reading and diving into work and stuff and put limits around that. The same for texting with social. I think we have to take a deeper look into why we're doing things in any sort of interface. So, yeah, because maybe you guys have struggled more with like texting and stuff and being in those places. Are there any things that you guys have done?
I think a question that I would have for you, is it mainly around scheduling things with people, or is it like responding out of like conversational based?
Scheduling.
So something that Jordan taught me was just putting a bigger block towards the end of my week to plan my next week. So it was like, so I hammered out all of my scheduling things the week prior, and then I wasn't spending the week trying to figure out my plans during that week. And then my communication with people during that week was just like, hey, are we still on for this time? Which has been really helpful, because then if I have time scheduled with people, then I know, okay, I want to talk to these people about these certain things while I'm in that space. So it's not, I don't have to use my phone as like a conversational tool, because I already have time built into the week for that person. So it's been really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great hack.
This isn't, I don't think this is really what you're asking, but I think that it's healthy to have some boundaries around when are you available. Like, you don't, especially in ministry, you have a lot of people who you care for and people who look to you. So it can be easy to get sucked into everybody's need any hour of the day, 24/7. I often receive texts late at night during family time, and I have to say, if this is an emergency, I'll call you right now. If it's not, we'll talk tomorrow. I'm not doing a 9 p.m. conversation with somebody about a non-emergency when I'm hanging out with my family.
Guys?
So having some boundaries around quality time there is helpful. And then the other thing, this really isn't what you were asking, but I've found that it's helpful. It makes me feel like I'm texting less when I am disciplined about clearing my inboxes at least every day. It's like I don't go to sleep with numbers still on my message app or my email app or things like that. I'm not perfect about it, but I try to be as good. And I really find that if I have a bunch of numbers, a bunch of the little red notification bubbles, my digital world just feels kind of chaotic. All right, so much stuff to do, but I don't really know what it is. But if I just clear it out, all right, I'm done. I'm good. It just gives you kind of a subconscious level of peace. So I know some people are the 6,000 unread emails kind of person. I'm not judging you, but it's helpful to clear your inboxes.
I'm the same.
It's very stressful.
That's good. Any other questions come to mind?
How do you kind of go about like deciding what app or usage is like good or negative for you? Whereas like Spotify, you can listen to music and get distracted, but you can also like listen to like a C.S. Lewis audiobook. You can like have YouTube to watch like dinosaur videos, or you can watch TED Talks. Like, how do you go about being able to kind of well balance your kind of multi-use apps?
It's funny that dinosaur videos was the negative. Seems pretty good to me.
It's where an inventory of what you're looking at is really helpful. Because you could say, if I get on this app and I look at this for X amount of time, but then that's maybe like really useful and helpful, and then another thing that's like a little bit vulnerable and not helpful, more destructive, or it's just dripping things in your life you don't want, you should ask yourself the question, is it worth interacting with this interface, with this app, if it even allows me to get to that point? So even if you do get some good things from it, maybe for a period of time it's worth just like not interacting with it if it's doing destructive things to you. But in order to get to that point, you have to really, this is one of my hacks, you have to really like take inventory of the things you're looking at and consuming. Are you'll never get there. You'll just like keep slipping into it.
Yeah.
'Cause that's probably most of us. Like every app, we use it for some good stuff and then some bad stuff, and you're trying to weigh it out and balance
Yeah.
what's what. Yeah, that's good advice, Brian. That's good. So what's this first one here?
Yeah. What is the main damage that social media does to us?
Like comparing ourselves to other people can be negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, comparison.
Mental health in general, I think.
Yeah. That's definitely what the statistics say. Yeah. If we're to really synthesize it, I would say the main damage that social media does to you is feeding on your biggest insecurities and hopes and dreams that are not aligned with God's will, and making you believe that that's what you really love. That's the biggest damage that social media can do to us, because it happens all within a very sophisticated, intelligent algorithm, where the more you look at stuff, the more you click on it, it learns you, and you kind of like and look at and click on things that you really like. I mean, it's just kind of how we work as people. So you have to be really intentional to avoid that. So the odds are not in our favor to not let a subtle worldview like leak into your life that you really don't agree with deep down. You don't really want to be like that, but you do consume it quite a bit. I guess this wasn't very synthesized, but that's it.
Yeah, I was thinking it's almost interesting to think about reverse engineering. So think about a demographic that really deals with social media, that I've seen social media damage. So I think of, because of the context Brian and I are in, moms. Social media for moms is very challenging. There's a lot of insecurity, a lot of comparison. It can become really, you can feel judgmental, or it can feel like I'm not doing enough, or I don't know what I'm doing here. And so you try to reverse engineer it, and you're like, well, it's because of a good thing. You know, moms love their children. They want to do the right thing. They want to raise their kid the best they can. They don't want to screw the kid up. And then you get flooded with these worldviews and these perspectives that may or may not align with what God wants for your child. But you're so flooded by it, you start to lose track of what God wants, and you start to just, you know, whatever the majority of the people on Instagram say is good must be what's actually good for the child. So it's interesting how it takes something that we care about, that is good, and then just by massive quantity pulls us away from clarity on God's design.
I think a follow-up question would be, like, if social media is designed to feed on our biggest insecurities, is it practical to think that we can have a healthy relationship with it?
I'm definitely not in the camp where I would say, as Christians, you should not have social media. I would not say that. I think the limitation of hours you consume stuff is really important. So, not letting it tell you when to use it is so important, because there are so many great things that allow us to stay connected with social media. Like, it's a brilliant way to pull people together, and it's also an incredibly destructive place to tear you apart. It's totally both. I'll say this. You didn't ask this. I'm so astounded by people who are just like using their platform for God's glory, and it's so obvious. I'm like, man, I follow a few accounts of people that are just like incredible at giving God glory for everything in their life. Like, either they're intentionally sharing the gospel with people and they're posting little clips, or they're just good thinkers about God and they're sharing what they're learning and believing, or they're just regular people with jobs and families and they're talking about God in their lives on their platform. I'm really challenged with that. I have a lot of friends that follow me that just are not believers, and when Mal and I got married, we attracted a ton of non-believers to us, and they follow our accounts. So personally, I can be challenging for me to be a high advocate for Christian things out of fear that it pushes those people away that we've drawn in close. But I would say, I'm like, man, if I could advocate for something, it wouldn't be that people would delete their social media, is that they would master it for the kingdom. Mm-hmm. If more people could just like say, my whole reason for owning social media is to glorify God with it, and advocate for what he's doing in my life, and post when he does something that is a gift or a blessing or something, and use that language and post scripture and bring people into who God really is in this world. That would be the dream. Not deleting it, but some people really need to delete it, or it's going to kill them. Like, it's both. So, I think that's a tricky question, and both are true. Some people should delete it, and some should go all in. Yeah.
It sounds like what you're saying is, like, to a degree, we have some sense of responsibility in which we have this platform that we can use to kind of share our faith with the world. A lot of people that I follow on Instagram who are trying to do that are met with a lot of like negative backlash. As the scripture kind of says, like, evil can only attack good. And so that's just something that I've seen. So how do you kind of feel that, where would we draw the line on kind of your own personal safety and comfort when you're being met with such a negative backlash trying to do that?
In the words of Joe Rogan, don't read the comments.
That's a good idea.
There's something to it. I mean, he obviously receives a lot more comments than any of us ever will, but there's just a lot of negative stuff out there, and if you try to sift through all of it all the time, you're never going to make it through. You'll get too discouraged and burnt out. So if you believe that you're doing what God called you to, then press on and don't worry about the negative. You don't have to give it the time of day.
Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah, as Christians, there's not much reason that the Bible gives to avoid doing something that's met with persecution. There's not a lot of good reasons to avoid being open about your faith if the punishment would be persecution. We should be right in the thick of that as Christians, to receive it head on and give glory to God, even if it's hard. There are much harder things you're going to face in life than persecution on social media. Although, I think bullying online is like horrible, so bad, and can cause some really severe damage to people. So if that's something that is happening to you because of like being an advocate for God's glory, then you should probably really consider, your ability to continue doing it. Although I don't think any of us in this room are there right now, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. I don't know many people who are getting bullied because of their advocacy for God's glory. I think most of us are more so just like scared.
I know there's like a component to like the multi-level marketing, like the mass amounts of communication that occurs, that is very intense for people to like be a part of that, and then like it can lead to like this intense feeling of like being like having the limelight on you or the spotlight on you or being magnifying it. I'd love this to like research it more, but do you think that most of like the social media stuff that's damaging is just being like staring at a screen for too long too, and that like kind of captures us and makes us feel like, I don't know, if it's just like, cause did you say like the root of all that would just be limiting like screen time? Or no?
I don't know that like the answer to all of our digital problems is to limit screen time, but to be really aware of the time you're spending on your screen and understand like what you're accomplishing from it or what's happening to you, what worldview it's building is maybe the most important part. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you guys really effectively rest from digital fatigue?
I'll tell you when I find out.
I don't use my phone for like more than 8 hours. Oh, sorry. I basically turn my phone off on Saturdays. And I don't use it. I often forget where it is.
I think
That
is true. I can validate that.
I think that is like actually, if you are in a place in your life where you can do that, that is one of the best things that you can do. And I did that for a long season where I didn't use my phone specifically on Saturdays as like a detox to understand. So I got off of my phone for a long time where it was a dumb phone. When I got back on it, I started doing that. I started that trend when I had like just went to just only texting and calling and like when I got back onto using my phone frequently to not cave to all the things I used to be addicted to, I would have to do like an inventory every Saturday. So to step away from it, you start to think like, oh, how has using my phone throughout the week affected me and stuff? And I would actively journal about those things. So I think it takes a ton of work. That's the answer. Like it takes so much work. You have to have a plan and stick to your plan. The thing about phones is they don't let you stick to your plan. That's the plan that the phone has, is to not let you stick to your plan. And even if you have like guards or anything like that, like I have limit on Instagram to be able to look at it for maximum of 1.5 hours a day, and on Facebook for like 30 minutes a day. And even then, like if I'm like really into something and my screen like limiter comes up, I'm like, screw it, I'll do another 15 minutes, you know? Like its whole goal is it's against you. It's trying to get you to stop. So having a good plan, sticking to the plan is a really great way to not get lost in the sauce with like usage. And I bet the people you know who are the best interacting with their phone have a good plan. Like they're not just like accidentally not looking at their phone. I have something to add to that no one asked about. Tony Reinke is the guy quoted. He wrote the book 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You. If you're thinking about reading any book, you should definitely read that. He works for a company called Desiring God, which John Piper is the primary person published in Desiring God. It kind of like gathers a lot of his work and then thoughts around his thoughts for the people. He read Tony Reinke's book, and there's like an interview with him talking about it, and he has like an iPad in front of him, and he has his phone, and he has his laptop, and the coolest thing I think I've ever heard is what he said about his devices. He's like, I read all this, and he's like, that's terrible. He's like, I love these devices, and his personality is so wonderful. He said, these devices are the portal that gives me the ability to share the gospel with the world. I love these devices. He's like, he holds his phone. Do you understand what this can do? And he talks about when he was younger and not being able to do that. And he's like, please don't take these from me. He's like, I hate that this is happening to the generation, but I love these things. And that's probably like one of the coolest things I think I've heard that pulled me and snapped me out of like all the things that I maybe have been consumed with in my personal problems with devices. It's just like, man, he is thinking in a whole different way than any of us. Mm-hmm. He has such a fierce love for God that it has built a filter between him and his phone, him and his laptop, him and his iPad. And the filter says anything coming through, either way, needs to be for God's glory. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing you can build in your life is a life statement, a life plan where everything you do is for God's glory, and then it starts to infect things around you. So John Piper's life has infected things, And his devices, when they appeared, he was like, oh, no way, here's another way that I can type faster, write more, publish more for God's glory. And I just think that's like an otherworldly way to think. It answers a lot of our questions I think we have as Christians in the digital world.
It's crazy to think that, like, pre-television, so pre-Billy Graham, if you were a Christian and you wanted somebody to hear the gospel, you had to get in front of their face.
Yeah.
You had to get on your boat and go to their island, or you had to.
Yeah.
And then with television, and especially with the internet and phones and computers, you can share a message with almost anyone in the whole world now. Missionaries throughout history would have done anything for that kind of tool, and now we all have it in our pockets, and we don't really use it. We don't care about it that much.
We're scared.
Yeah. But it is pretty interesting to think that way. But
It is, yeah.
okay, any last questions? I'm gonna wrap up here.
What's the end of the
12 ways your phone is changing you. Yeah, if you wanted to write that down.
Okay, last question, Hailee.
If you notice somebody around you that is addicted to their phone but doesn't see it as a problem, how do you approach that conversation?
I mean, I can just tell him he's right here.
No, I'm not. I was more so thinking of it like in industry. Some of the gals that.
Some good
He's
questions.
asking for a friend.
That's right.
Me and Mal, my wife, we say, hang up and hang out. It's like, I think when you are close to someone, you can think of ways that are like quick, that you both agree on is the better thing to do. And we would both agree that rather than being on our phones, it's better to hang out. So we just simply say, hang up and hang out. It's like, and I'm like, got me. Because I'm probably the one that has the problem, you know? It's like, it's me. And someone needs to talk to me, and I need the people in my life around me to know. So the best thing you can do is to be in a relationship with someone and acknowledge that the best way to do it is to say, I have been struggling with this. When we tell people we're struggling with something, then typically they're pretty quick to say, what? Me too. And I think the best thing you can do is to articulate your own struggles before trying to articulate other people's struggles. It just knocks down walls when we say what we're struggling with. And oh my gosh, I've been in huddle so many times where someone has said something to me that they're struggling with, and I was unwilling to say it, and I have been like, me too. Or in this digital world, I've confessed something, like I've looked at something that I'm not proud of, or I've spent time and it's been a distraction for my family, whatever, and I've confessed that in huddle. And other guys have been like, me too. And maybe I kind of observed that about them, or I can't even see their life up close, or I kind of, and I maybe wanted to call them out, but the best way to help someone else in their struggles are to confess our own.
All right.
I've got one last
All right, one last.
I was having a conversation with someone, and they told me that their like not even 2-year-old has never flown without an iPad in front of them, and it's always tuned into VeggieTales and stuff. So as parents, I'm very curious on what your guys' take is on like raising kids with screens in the house.
My main take is flying with a 2-year-old is unbelievably difficult. So if you have not done it, you should have a lot of grace for people that you see doing it.
Yeah.
Because it's horrible.
It might be on that list of 10 hardest things to do in your life. Yeah. Do you have a take?
Yeah, I'm gonna take
We can both. Maybe we can both. Sometimes me and Preston have different positions, and we always somehow end up at the same place, but articulate different, or just totally disagree.
It wouldn't surprise me if we were pretty similar.
I think we're probably close.
We're not 100% anti-screens, but we're pretty low screens. So she doesn't do any handheld stuff. We don't do iPads or phones or anything like that. We have a Facebook portal. I don't know if you know. It's kind of a big blocky thing that she does FaceTime calls with Grandma and Grandpa on that. So that's the only handheld type thing she ever sees. But she probably watches 3 or 4 movies a week. Like Disney movies, we'll put on a movie once in a while for her, and we don't have any problem with that. So we try to minimize it. We don't do it right when she wakes up or right before bed. We don't use it as a cure for boredom. So we want to force her into boredom often because it's a helpful skill to have as an adult. But just kind of try to go in moderation.
I just bought a projector. I gotta say that's awesome.
Okay, go. Projectors are nice. It's true.
There's the Samsung that comes with all these free channels too. And I don't hate it. Like, I don't like it.
Believe you.
It doesn't hurt my eyes.
Yeah, we're pretty much the same. Yeah, we're not anti-screen time for Van. And we have made a point that when we look at screens, we are almost 100% of the time doing it together. So we'll say something like, do you want to watch this with me? And one of us will be in the vicinity and not just leaving him alone watching something. Is important. So we do stuff together. So digital entertainment is something we do together, not in isolation or by ourselves. So pretty similar to
Yeah.
you guys.
That's probably
and
a
it
good
might
rule,
change when
but-
Van gets older. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we got looser there when we had the second one.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean,
We'll
honestly, we're like, all right, we need Piper to be distracted for an hour. We got some stuff we need to get done. So we just put her downstairs, put the Disney movie on, gotta do something.
The other thing maybe I'll add on to is like, if there's anything on a screen, we have to like what they're saying. Like,
Yeah.
Van has learned so much from the things we've shown him on screens, and we're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you knew that. And you're like, oh, he's watched it 1,000 times. You know, like little tiny clips and stuff where we watched it as a family. Like me and Mal know those things. You're like, but when he is now saying so many words, he knows so many things because we put educational things in front of him, and it's really helpful. So. I assume most of you have a little time before it's going to happen, but have a plan for your family and digital things. There's Andy Crouch. You can write that name down. If you want to learn about digital use with families, he's like, I couldn't think of it earlier, Xavier, but Andy Crouch has really good writing on like family digital use. So, yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you all thanks for being here. Hopefully there's some helpful stuff.
Get out of here.
See
Go
ya.
home.
Billy.